Hello everybody and welcome back to LRN, where today we are reporting on the news that Nyck De Vries has officially signed a deal with AlphaTauri. So huge news. We've talked about it before on the channel and how this was being rumoured as the move after initial suggestions said he was probably going to be heading to Williams. It quickly moved after his performance at Monza that he was being heavily linked with the drive at AlphaTauri. And now we're hearing news that that deal is done, the contract is signed, and it's ready to be announced this weekend at the Japanese Grand Prix. So before we get into the details, where this information is coming from, what the implications are, what this is going to trigger in terms of other moves around the F1 grid moving forward. If you are new around here, please do make sure to subscribe on the bottom right hand side. To all of you who have subscribed in the last couple of days, it's been massive. So thank you so much to all of you who have subscribed to the channel and gotten involved in the chat. So please do again on this video as well. Make sure to let me know what you think about the De Vries move, and do you think this is a good move for him going to AlphaTauri? I want to know all of your thoughts in the comments below, but we'll get into it then in terms of where this confirmation has come from. So the first outlet to officially announce the deal was done has been Canal Plus. The French media outlet have confirmed that from their sources this deal is done. We've also had other reports from up and down the paddock that Helmut Marko has been spotted with Nyck De Vries having direct conversations. So it was an open secret that these parties were involved in conversations to bring him to AlphaTauri. Obviously, we know that Helmut Marko was originally their #1 choice to come into AlphaTauri. Of course, would be replacing Pierre Gasly. If they were to lose Pierre Gasly, they wanted to make sure, and I'll quote Helmut Marko here, it must be a high-profile and fast driver. So their first view was to go for Colton Herta. Now, you might say that, is he high profile and is he a fast driver? Well, he's high profile in the world of America, and he would have brought in a lot of interest from the American side of the business, which I think in terms of financially, that could have been a massive benefit. And he is considered a good prospect and a quick driver in IndyCar. So they could argue that that was the case with Colton Herta as well. But I certainly think that Nyck De Vries matches that profile. He, of course, is a former Formula E champion, and he's been with Mercedes within their stable of drivers for years, very well regarded. And of course, his drive at Monza only cemented him in his status as a top free agent to bring into the world of F1. So from that point forward, AlphaTauri have been heavily linked with a move for Nyck De Vries. And you have to imagine that they at his age as well, being 27, he'll be looking at it as probably, he must be looking at it as, I think I can get into that Red Bull seat quicker than I can get into that Mercedes seat should I have gone to a Williams as an example. So another thing Helmut Marko has been quoted as saying is there are talks and we hope to have a clear situation by next weekend. I assume that should be decided by Suzuka. Then we can say what's the deal. So, of course, these parties aren't going to announce officially. We're not going to hear it from AlphaTauri. We're not going to hear it from Nyck De Vries. He's even been on Sky Sports and said that, you know, he might not even get a seat for the following year, but there will be agreements in place, non-disclosure agreements, that they will not be allowed to announce this deal from either side until the agreed date, and that is supposedly this weekend at the Suzuka Grand Prix. So I'm looking forward to that. And I guess my first reaction to this is congratulations to Nyck De Vries. Definitely wanted to see him on the grid, and I'm really happy for him that he will be joining AlphaTauri and that this deal is going to be announced. I think that is absolutely fantastic, and I'm hoping that all of these announcements coming through the media are true, because it definitely want to see him on the grid. I definitely think he's deserving. Obviously, we're going to be losing people from the grid this year because of this, where one comes in, someone has to go, and that's not going to be Pierre Gasly. Pierre Gasly is pretty much set that he's going to be making that move over to Alpine. That is why this seat is becoming available. So again, another reason they can't announce this straight away. They need to make sure all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, for not just De Vries to AlphaTauri, but for Gasly to Alpine. Everything really is going to be announced, I imagine, either at the same time or in quick succession. So again, look out for that one as well. But certainly, again, I think for Gasly, that's a perfect move. I think he needed to get out of AlphaTauri, so I do think it's a good move for him, but also a brilliant move for De Vries just to get into Formula One. You know, getting in can be the hardest bit, and once you're in the door, it's easier, I think, to move around the grid to other teams as your career progresses. But certainly interesting in terms of whether or not I think this is the right decision. I think he had... obviously, getting a seat was paramount for him on the F1 grid. And as I say, I'm really happy that is confirmed and that he will be in Formula One. I'm surprised more hasn't been done by Mercedes to keep him on board and to get him into a seat at Williams and maybe make the same transition as George Russell, where he goes into Williams, performs, proves himself, and then makes that move to Mercedes. My view was that would hopefully be what happened with him. Maybe Russell moving up to that number 1 spot at Mercedes when Hamilton moves on, and then De Vries coming in as the number 2. That's kind of how I saw things progressing. Clearly, that isn't going to be the case. It's going to be De Vries to AlphaTauri. My reservations around the move to AlphaTauri was that Red Bull hasn't been a brilliant place for drivers to develop since they've been winning races with Max Verstappen. It's been very much, especially when drivers take that step up to the number 2 seat at Red Bull, it's very much a pro Max Verstappen environment. And of course, we know how good Max Verstappen is. So I'm not saying he shouldn't be the number 1 and he shouldn't be pushed, but we've seen the struggles of Daniel Kvyat, of Alexander Albon, and of Perez to a certain extent in that number 2 seat at Red Bull. So maybe he would have had a better opportunity in terms of being pushed and having a real chance at a world championship at Mercedes. That was my sort of take on it. I think for as long as Max Verstappen is in that Red Bull, it's going to be angled towards him. The design of the car is going to be angled towards him. And it's going to be difficult for a number 2 driver to come in there and outperform him. Now, of course, I'm jumping ahead. He's going to AlphaTauri first. He will need to prove himself at AlphaTauri. He will need to be consistently outperforming Yuki Tsunoda and show that he really is the guy to go and take that number 2 seat should Perez move on. I certainly don't suspect that it'll be Max Verstappen moving on anytime soon, or really maybe he'll be a lifer at Red Bull, unless he's another one of those drivers that down the line says I've always dreamed to drive for Ferrari. We know how many drivers have done that in the past. But I would suspect long term, all being well and assuming that De Vries does as well as we hope he will end up as a number 2 driver at Red Bull. And I'm really excited to see how that plays out. I think a team of Verstappen and De Vries on paper sounds really exciting. Of course, currently we've only got his performance in terms of Formula 1 at Monza to go by, and what a performance it was, but it was a one-off, and we do need to make sure that he can deliver that week in, week out at multiple tracks through the season. So we do need to wait and see how he performs in those scenarios. But as I say, great news that he's joining AlphaTauri. For me, really important that he got a seat on the grid this year, and that does mean that Gasly will be moving to Alpine. Now, that does leave a couple of positions open. Williams then, with De Vries moving to AlphaTauri, who I thought he would go to Williams, so that does sort of give credence to the news that Williams are really interested in bringing through their academy driver, Logan Sargent. So I would maybe suspect that he's going to come into that seat and replace Nicholas Latifi. And if that seat goes to Logan Sargent, then that leaves the situation at Haas as the only available seat for next season. And really difficult to decide sort of who's going to go to Haas at the moment. We've talked about it again on the channel before. We've discussed that Hülkenberg and Giovinazzi have been linked with the seat. The benefits of Giovinazzi being that obviously Haas are supplied by Ferrari. Giovinazzi has those Ferrari links, and it helps strengthen that bond between Ferrari and Haas and their relationship, which I think is good for Haas potentially. Obviously, Hülkenberg comes with a breadth of experience, much more race weekends for Hülkenberg instead of Giovinazzi. We've got Mick Schumacher, but it doesn't seem like there's any way back for Mick Schumacher at Haas, and it's starting to look like he will be without a seat next season. It could be that he ends up being a reserve driver, maybe looking to make a comeback the following season, but I will personally be sad to see Mick Schumacher leave the F1 grid. If that does get confirmed, I would really like to see him stay on. Maybe bridges can be mended at Haas, and he can prove in the next few races he's deserving of a seat before Haas make an announcement of any other driver. but it doesn't sound like, at least as things stand, he will be remaining at Haas next season. So, as I say, looking forward to seeing how that plans out over the next few races. I just do hope he remains in the world of F1. So, yeah, interesting. I really don't know who's going to end up in that seat at Haas at the moment. I think if I had to put my money on anyone as it stands, it would probably be Giovinazzi. But anything can happen in the world of F1. You know, that it could be Daniel Ricciardo that ends up there, but there's no rumours, there's no talk, there's nothing happening in the news that suggests to me Danny Ricciardo's going to get that seat at Haas. Maybe it doesn't even appeal to him. Maybe that's just too far down the pecking order to keep him on board. We've heard over the weekend from the Formula One broadcast that actually Ricciardo's been talking to people about the fact that maybe a year out, recharging his batteries, learning to love the sport again, learning to miss the sport, and then coming back rejuvenized could be the way forward for Daniel Ricciardo. But we know how hard it can be to leave the sport and come back, and there is that risk that he might feel ready to come back and there might just be no seats available to him, and that could be it for Danny Rick. Now, I do think a year out would be the best thing for him. Let me know in the comments below if you agree. Do you think Danny Ricciardo needs to spend a year out of Formula One to feel that need to be in Formula One again, to rebuild that love for the sport, and then maybe come back rejuvenated and give it another go? Or do you think that actually, if he's going to remain in F1, which a lot of people don't think he should, that just leaving is too risky, he wouldn't be able to get back in, so he should take a seat further down the order, regain his confidence, and then maybe look to get one more drive at a top team before his eventual retirement in a few years' time. Maybe that'd be the way for him to go. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. But of course then, the main story, Nyck De Vries, deal done. He has signed an agreement according to multiple sources, and as reported by Canal Plus, he has signed the deal with AlphaTauri, and we are due an announcement this weekend at the Japanese Grand Prix, which I'm really excited for as well. Looking forward to getting back to Suzuka. I do love this track. Hopefully with these new 22 cars as well, we can see some really close, exciting racing like we've seen at multiple races this season through the 22 calendar. But so let me know, are you looking forward to the race this weekend? How do you think it's going to go? Is Max finally going to go ahead and get his second Drivers' Championship? Let me know your thoughts and predictions for the race in the comments below, as well as, do you think this is a good move for Nyck De Vries? This is what I really want to know. Is this the right move for him? Should he have gone to Williams, or is it just get him on the grid, let him show what he can do, and then maybe on down the line he can make moves elsewhere, like Gasly is about to do to Alpine? Maybe you think that's the right thing for him. Make sure to let me know in the comments below. As I said earlier though, if you are new around here, please make sure to subscribe on the bottom right hand side, and make sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. And thanks again to everyone who subscribed to the channel in the last couple of days. It's been an absolutely fantastic reaction and I really appreciate it. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day. Look forward to the race this weekend. Goodbye.